Hello and welcome to the latest episode of Off the Grid, Crash Test new chat show, delving into the news, gossip and Chinese whispers. The rumors have spread a bit like when Sebastian Vettel's been seen having a coffee with Helmut Marko and suddenly it's a 4-year Red Bull contract. I'm Ollie Barstow and joining me today is freelance F1 journalist and veritable wordsmith, Kate Walker, and Chris Medland, another of F1's roving reporters and breakout star of Drive to Survive. John, my flatmate, actually loves that show, and he, do you know Joe Chris Medland? I absolutely love him. He's fantastic. So, huge fan.
I made him. That's what you should say, Ollie.
Yeah. I knew him before he did some talking.
Yeah. We knew you.
Before we begin, don't forget to like and subscribe, which will be magically appearing below me, hopefully, at some point in this edit. So if you come join because we've got loads of videos going up at the moment, putting a big push to our YouTube channel. Disappointed. Now, we're heading to the British Grand Prix this weekend. It's its first of 2 Silverstone events. No fans, of course. It's a shame because obviously one of the great things about Silverstone is the atmosphere. So, Chris, you'll be heading up there this weekend. You've done a couple of races already without spectators in Austria and Hungary. Just what's it like kind of in the epicenter of everything?
Really, really weird. It's great not having fans in the sense you can just drive in at the time you need to get to work rather than having to arrive 2 hours earlier to join a queue. But aside from that, actually, it does really suck. The atmosphere is non-existent. It doesn't even feel like testing because even with testing, you have fans milling around and people in certain grandstands trying to get a view of that sort of thing. And then when you're sort of set in the track and from the media perspective, we're just locked in the media centre. We're not allowed to go anywhere else. All the interviews are done via Zoom like this. You're on press conferences with a bunch of other journalists who are generally either sat in the media centre with you or sat at home, a bit like I am today. And then you just kind of have to do these sorts of chats and then get to work at your socially distant desk, wear a mask if you're not sat at it, and then leave again. It's a bit boring, to be honest, but it's still better than not being there. You do feel a bit closer to everything. And when there's track action, you at least get to look out the window and see an F1 car. So that part's cool, at least.
Let's go back to the actual action this weekend. Obviously, Lewis Hamilton, great couple of races recently, and he adores Silverstone. He adores it for the fans that won't be there. But, Mercedes, you would think, is got to be the hot favorites for pretty much every circuit, but particularly Silverstone.
Yeah. Can't see anyone else beating Merck at the moment. I mean, the Racing Point at times does look ridiculously quick as well, but still not at Mercedes level. Red Bull do seem to have more performance in there somewhere, but they just can't get that car working properly yet. They seem to have a bit of a gap between what they're seeing on their sim and what they came up with in the wind tunnel and what's actually happening on track. So that's always fun for a team to have to try and work out. So while they're working on that, nobody seems to be able to get close to Mercedes. So I would be amazed, unless the Great British Summer does its thing and gives us a lovely, crazy, wet race, I'll be amazed if anyone other than Mercedes is winning on Sunday.
Well, you have to take reliability into account, don't forget. I mean, we've seen quite a lot more retirements in the opening races this season than we have done in previous years. Mercedes engine cars haven't been immune from trouble. So, but that's the real shame, is that we are looking at reliability as being the thing that could cause an upset. We're not really looking at anything else.
And what would be great for that would be if it was really hot, which it will be on Friday. So they'll probably all struggle on Friday. But then by Sunday, it's going to cool down and be nice and easy again. So it's not, at the moment, the weather's not being friendly to us.
Yeah, it's sod's law. I mean, Friday's supposed to be the hottest day of the year in the UK. So they're going to have a lot of fun with that one.
Yeah.
You mentioned their Racing Point, and, given its Mercedes clothing, Mercedes sort of style, that should put up a good surprise this weekend. And especially Red Bull not being quite on point at the moment. They've got the flashes of real good speed, but it's been tempered by obviously technical chassis issues. And Ferrari.
Yeah, Ferrari. I might throw that one to Kate in a bit and let her use her Italian knowledge. She can give us a great description of how they're performing at the moment in Italian. But yeah, Red Bull, I think, are the ones that would be the biggest threat to Mercedes as the year goes on. It's just how quickly they get their heads around that car. And Racing Point are shooting themselves in the foot a bit because you mentioned about the joke of, Seb has a coffee with Helmut Marko and he's joining Red Bull, but there's the talks of him going to Racing Point. And that looks like it would mean Perez would leave, which is destabilising things slightly, I think. And then that means the driver that was more likely to deliver the big results maybe isn't feeling the love right now and isn't performing at his absolute best as a result of that. So I feel like they're hurting their chances slightly of really capitalising right now when Red Bull are struggling.
I want to be the devil's advocate here, though. I don't think they're going to get rid of Sergio. Would you? I mean, first off, he's the better driver. Secondly, he's committed to a future in F1, whereas Lance never looks like he wants to be there. He might be the boss himself, but don't forget how much money Sergio brings. You know, you've got the Mexican connection, you've got the slim money, you have got all of that backing, which is no small thing. And, you know, Stroll Senior is a proper businessman. I don't necessarily think he would make family ties get in the way of what is a logical business decision. I don't know. Maybe it's me being devil's advocate for the sake of it, but I can see an awful lot of reasons to get rid of Lance and not so many reasons to get rid of Sergio.
I think Lance would step down from that role. I mean, pressure from his father obviously would account for a lot, but he's got a competitive car underneath him. Do you think he could take it as an opportunity to try and, as I say, improve his reputation, but bolster his reputation in F1 by kind of taking one for the team by leaving the team?
No, to be honest, just because that car's too good. I think his reputation is only going to be helped by being in a more competitive car like that. And to be fair, he's the one who delivered the better result, better two results really over the last two races. I mean, Checo should have had a better one and hit Albon in the second Austrian race. And then, in Hungary, Stroll was just better than him all weekend, really. And Perez had issues with dizziness, but then didn't really get a good start, and that hurt him badly as well. So the way at this kind of moment in time, Perez isn't making himself undroppable. But I see Kate's point from a business decision. But then I'd say, would they have got rid of Ocon when there was a contract there for him to stay and brought Stroll in instead once Lawrence took over? Exactly. But there was kind of no need because Lawrence Stroll had taken control of the team by then. So I think he'd still back Lance. Lance is still young. I mean, that is one thing. I have been impressed. He's getting better. Give him a more stable car. He admits himself he can't drive round problems, but give him a good car and he's pretty damn quick. And he's so young. He's got time to develop still.
Look at the business pages, though. I mean, yesterday Aston announced, I think it was £220 million losses over the year so far. And additionally, they have, I think it's the last 2 years, they have to refile a bunch of their reports because it turned out that their American retailers were classifying sales incorrectly somehow. So not only are they £250 million in debt right now, but they're probably going to be a lot further in when they figure out what mess was made and how to unmake it.
Yeah, and I guess
Sebastian's going to come in as a huge publicity behind Sebastian. If he wants to come in, of course, we don't know if he wants to come in. He's keeping his cards famously close to his chest as he always does. Big publicity boost for them, but can they afford to say goodbye to that kind of money as well? Seb's not necessarily going to perform. We've got Sergio, we've got Lance finishing ahead of him in races at the moment.
That's true, and the thing I think that would actually play a fairly big part will be the interest it shows in the team if Seb does join. Does that mean they can get bigger contracts from certain people because they've got a world champion in there, which I know something that McLaren used to look at when you had Jenson Button and Fernando Alonso, or when they just had Alonso and Van Dorn, but they were struggling. But just having a world champion on certain sponsorship deals was a really big deal. So whether that would change anything, I'm not too sure. But it does depend on, I think, what Seb wants to do. But if you were Seb as well right now and you look at how strong Racing Point look, it's probably the best option for next season almost if Red Bull's not there, other than Mercedes. So I think he'd probably think, well, why not? At least go and give it a go. And if it doesn't work out, then maybe try something else. But this could be a really good opportunity to be in a car that will be sniffing around podiums potentially more often than Ferrari will be.
And he can also do the Lewis to Mercedes thing of sort of making the unusual move at an unexpected time that ends up helping create a legacy. Because Seb's big problem is that he's probably not going to win titles with Racing Point Force India, but if he can consistently get them on the podium, having only had his titles with Red Bull, that's a different sort of chapter that he can add to his driving career. It will actually, I think, give him a bit more gravitas as a racer.
Do you think he sees the benefit in being something of an underdog in a new role? I think that's Felipe Massa left for Ferrari for Williams and did a great job, great timing with the car and everything. But he kind of, I think he extended his career by 2 or 3 years on the back of those sort of strong results. Do you think Seb is
Monza podium with Felipe and all of the tifosi shouting his name. I mean, I can't remember a more emotional Monza, and it's always an emotional race.
Yeah, I think that was definitely a good move for Massa. A bit of a fresh break, and it's getting more like that for Vettel. About 12 months ago, I'd have said no chance. You know, he's in a strong place, and he was fighting to be the number one at Ferrari. But the way they've now quite clearly decided they want to go another direction, and he's not valued there, was a little bit like Massa got at certain times. He was very much the number two, have a 1 year deal, and they didn't put enough faith in him. And he said himself, then going somewhere like Williams, where you got 3 years as a contract that said, yeah, we want you to come and really contribute to our team. That's a great feeling and kind of boosts a driver. It's like a reset. So I think, yeah, Seb could benefit from that side of it as well.
Do you see any more sort of potential seismic moves in the driver market? Because if that's Checo's out of the drive and that's another high-profile driver who's out of the drive, how do you see the rest of the pieces kind of fitting in?
I'd say seismic, no, just because I think most of the big seats then will be sorted. I saw the odd rumour of linking Perez to Red Bull, and I just don't see that happening at all. Red Bull are pretty damn good at just promoting from within, and they seem to be really backing Albon right now strongly that they want to make that work. So I really don't see that happening. Mercedes I see as the same lineup for next year. So I think it would just be Perez being on the market for someone like Haas. If Haas are going to stay around, that could be quite a nice tie-up. Again, that's a team that really could do with his input in terms of his experience, his performance, but also those sponsors he can bring as well. So I think that could be a good fit, which would probably mean Grosjean dropping out. I think looking at it, I think that's the one of the two. I think Haas would back Magnussen to stay on, but that all depends if Haas stay in the sport. So if anything seismic happens, I think it'll actually be less of a driver moving, and it'll be the knock-on effect of the drivers if Haas pull out.
Now, of course, we've got the British Grand Prix this weekend, so it's not just Lewis Hamilton. He's not the only British driver on the grid this weekend, but George Russell, who, fair to say, his profile is just growing and growing and growing. It's his second season in F1, but on the back of a spectacular win in the esports series, and developing a bit of a good reputation on social media and his friendship with Alex Albon and Lando Norris. He's getting a pretty high profile for someone with low points at the moment, and expectations are really high. So, just how much has he grown up, would you say, in the winter, and sort of come out this season and being kind of punchy in qualifying at least?
Very punchy, isn't he? We kind of we look at the way that Russell was anyway. I think he always backed his own talent. The way he won the F2 championship, I think Kate was dealing with him a lot then, doing F2 press conferences, and he exuded confidence even then. So coming out of that, he hasn't lost any of that, even though last year's Williams was not competitive at all, and he feels that he's deserving of a frontline seat, and he's not. I think he's got a bit of a chip on his shoulder now. He feels like he needs to stay punchy to prove it and make sure no one forgets him. So, yeah, I quite like that attitude. And he is delivering on Saturdays, not yet on Sundays, but to be fair to him, it's not surprising he's rusty because, as you say, the only competitive racing he's really had has been in esports. The rest of the time in F1, he was trundling around at the back. So he hasn't had that experience of racing in the midfield for a long time.
But what he has done, and I think you have to give him a lot of credit for it, because driving the Williams last year would have made most people, I think, suicidal. And if you put yourself in his shoes, like you're a young driver, you've got backing from one of the biggest teams, you've just won the championship, and you get a seat, but it's in a car that can't really do anything. And the guy that you beat to the title, one of the people you consider your greatest on-track rivals, is got his shot in a Red Bull. And rather than letting it get to him, George was able to make the most out of every weekend. And there's great feedback from the team about what he's like to work with, about the effort that he puts in. He's mindful of the fact that Mercedes are keeping an eye on him, and he really did use a miserable year to do an awful lot of growing, and now he's got the opportunity to do a bit more growing on track because he's got a car that can deliver.
Yeah, F1 is you can win every junior category and get up to F1, but a lot of it's that timing. At the end of the day, we don't quite foresee Williams going to plunge that much. It's nice to see it kind of making a bit of a step up. It's a bit of a shame that the change in regulations, which are traditionally good at reinterpreting, today again has been pushed back a year. But where do you think George seemingly is on Mercedes' radar, whether it's going to be direct from Williams to Mercedes, I'm not entirely sure. But do you see him in a silver arrow, whether it's replacing Lewis Hamilton, being a successor, which is what he's trying to do, or replacing Bottas and actually going directly up against the person who considered to be like a mentor and a mentee?
I think he's more likely to go in and replace Lewis. I think Mercedes are going to try and keep that partnership of Hamilton and Bottas as long as they can, because the success has just been immense. And why would you take the risk to change that? Because it will end at some point. And like you say, that could be 2022, but then you definitely wouldn't change it for next year then, and make sure you capitalise on this in next season. And then you'd probably stick with the same lineup for 22. And if you're not winning anymore, okay, then it's worth the risk. But if you are, again, stick with it. I think what George has got, he's got a third year at Williams. Hopefully they keep moving forward so that he's racing even more competitively year on year, even if it's with the same team. But I do feel like he's leapt ahead of Ocon at the moment, partly because of Ocon having the year out, but there just seems to be a bit more momentum behind George that's hard to stop. So Ocon's going to have a hell of a year, I think, this year, and maybe next season he's got as well, to get back ahead of him. And I just don't see that happening. I think Mercedes right now are thinking George is ready whenever we need him, but we can keep him on ice as long as we need.
Also, how much on really? France isn't a massive market for Daimler as things stand. So there are all these little considerations that aren't necessarily related to what happens on track that are still part of the business.
That's true. Chris, you've actually been working closely with Formula 2 as well, and it's a strong field this year, I must say. The drivers you think are well on the path towards Formula 1?
I mean, you can't ignore Robert Schwartzman, can you? Sort of the success he had in Formula 3 last year, and then he's just hit the ground running in F2. A couple of feature race wins. He's always at the front. He's had the odd retirement still. Spun at turn 1 in Austria in the sprint race, where we were just saying, wow, he looks really good. And then he did make a mistake that reminds you he's a rookie at this level. But nobody else has come out flying. Callum Ilot's been looking better. Now he's in a more competitive car. That's been good to see. And that's also good because he's a Ferrari Driver Academy member. So he needed to make a bit of a statement so he doesn't get forgotten. I've always been impressed with Mick Schumacher. I know everyone does watch him and expect huge things because of the name, and last year was a bit underwhelming, but the amount of times he was in a really strong position, and admittedly sometimes ruined that through his own driving errors, but other times had problems with reliability or poor luck, and it meant there was a number of big results that got away from him. And it was a bit the same at the start of this season as well. There was definitely a point that he should have been at least second, if not one, in Austria, and then he threw it at the scenery. And he's just had a few reliability issues as well. So, yeah, there's some good names there. There's some good talents. Joe is one that I think, if we have Kate talking about kind of the bigger economic impact, he's one that people want to see do well, but he's not actually started the year so well, which is a bit of a shame. But there's some great young talents as well. Marcus Armstrong, Christian Lundgaard, that have all been performing week in, week out. And I'm really excited by Yuki Tsunoda, actually, at Carlin. Young Japanese driver. We haven't had a Japanese driver in a while in Formula 1. Honda want him to do well. He's a Red Bull Junior as well. He's got the whole path there ready. Just needs to deliver. And he would have won the feature race at the second race in Austria, but his radio stopped working and he missed his pit stop. So that was a bit heartbreaking to watch. But yeah, he looks like a talent as well.
No, I agree with that. Actually, Robert Schwarzman, really impressive through the junior ranks. The first season of F3 before changed over to where it is at the moment. Runner up with a ridiculously good run to the end of the season in his rookie season, and then dominating last year in Formula 2. So comes with big backing as well, Russian backs, of course. So do you think him, and who do you think is stepping up? I mean, so you mentioned Schumacher there. Do you think he's ready for next year? Because Alfa Romeo has been mentioned a few times.
I don't think Mick's ready to step up next year. Do you?
He could be. I feel like he should be. I feel like it would have been 2 years in Formula 2. As you and I know, when we deal with these drivers regularly, that's basically, once you're beyond that point, it's becoming very tough to convince people to put you in an F1 seat. Not impossible by any stretch, but you do have to have a hell of a season or a lot of money behind you, usually. And I was going to say, he's just shown some really good flashes of potential. He'll just need to knit it all together. So if he does do that, probably in the second half of this season, it's something he did in Formula 3 when he won that title. If he can knit it all together, then that will build the momentum that could see him take a seat at Alfa, because I'm not convinced that either or both of those Alfa Romeo drivers are going to be staying next season.
Yeah, no, I mean, Alfa could certainly do with some fresh blood, that's for sure. I don't know, I'm just, I haven't paid anything like enough attention to the junior categories this year because I've been doing other things in lockdown, enjoying having a life for a change. But it's been really refreshing. But yeah, I thought that Mick's biggest it factor was more his surname than what he was delivering on track. I mean, and even when he won in Formula 3, there were some questions about that championship that year. And yeah, I don't know. I've never seen that moment from him on track. I'm like, that's what everybody's talking about, and like usually with a driver, even if they're not consistent, I don't know, because I don't analyze the drivers like you do, but sometimes I get it, and with him I don't.
Yeah, it's true. It's one of the things that a lot of young drivers have to do is, it's all well and good analysing them really closely, but they have to stand out and get themselves on the radar by doing something special normally. And if they're regularly winning, then it's a name you can't ignore. You're going to hear it all the time. Or if they're not, then they have to do something that remarkable that catches your eye. And if he hasn't done that, that does show.
Do you remember Roma in GP2? Was it Spa where he overtakes 3 cars in one corner? Yeah, I mean, I can't remember what the rest of his season was like, but my God, we all remembered that move.
Yeah, it's a good point. I think that's when he won the title, in the end.
It?
But yeah, but
it's not the title. 3 cars, 1 corner. I mean, as Buxton said in the commentary, oh, shut up.
Right, politics. This is Kate. This is your area. F1 politics. Now, you like you say, you've been enjoying lockdown, making pizza, and generally enjoying not having to deal with all the rigmarole that comes with F1. But you keep your ear to the ground, I know. So, what's the kind of the murmurings behind the scenes, behind the lockdown?
Well, I mean, it depends what sort of murmurings, because obviously you've got the Concord negotiations that are ongoing, but they are not as behind the scenes as certain team principals want them to be. Again, to put it diplomatically. It's been a really, really weird season, because when the people that I've been talking to, the behind the scenes stuff is all about the calendar and how you can create the calendar. And because, we're in the weird position at the moment where ordinarily we'd be discussing first drafts and making provisional hotel bookings for 2021 based on a first draft that was likely to change a bit, but not that much by December. And now we can't even guarantee what we're doing until the end of the year. Depending on who you speak to, the season is going to end either the 13th or the 20th of December, which is going to be pretty... Well, it's not that bad. I mean, because, if you hate your family and you're already out in Dubai, you can go to the Maldives or the Seychelles or something, and it's only about a 4.5-hour flight.
Maybe you want to watch the Queen's speech followed by F1. Perfect Christmas day.
But so that's all of these stuff that I've been hearing. I mean, because F1 is set to do a double header at Silverstone followed by a race in Spain. Well, we've all seen what happened with the Spain travel quarantine this week. The areas around Barcelona are some of the most affected in the current resurgence. So there are backup plans underfoot for what happens if Spain becomes impossible, because some of the teams have said they can't travel. Belgium is currently looking at undergoing a new nationwide lockdown, and depending on how long that lasts, that's quite likely to put Spa in trouble. At which point you start looking at the possibility of a secondary race in Hockenheim. And look at the season, if they want to squeeze the right number of races in, because they need a minimum of 15 for TV deals and sponsorship deals, because otherwise, all the money is terrible anyway, but it's going to be even worse if they can't hit 15. So we might be looking at back-to-backs in both Bahrain and Abu Dhabi using different circuit layouts. And we all know how much fun the endurance circuit layout was in Bahrain in 2010.
The person wants to do sort of Roval kind of out. That's about 45 seconds long as a lap, which would be great. But you say that we did get a new draft of the calendar last week, and of course we've got Imola and Nürburgring coming back and going to Portimao for the first time in Portugal since 1996. So having I cover a lot of bike racing. I see Portimao quite a lot. That's going to be fun. That's a very roller coaster rubber circuit, quite fast as well.
Yeah, Mugello's not too bad either, is it? Yeah, I was going to say, I think if Kate gets 3 Italian Grand Prix in a year, she's delighted.
See, and I've already been to Italy, I think 4 times this year. I would have been an awful lot more if lockdown hadn't gotten in the way. But yeah, I've got a villa for Mugello, I've got a hotel for Imola, I've got myself an apartment for Monza. I don't care if I'm not allowed to the race. I'm allowed to drink pizza, drink pizza, eat wine, buy shoes, enjoy the, just beautiful Italy. Speaking of beautiful Italy, poor Ferrari. Oh my goodness. Che cazzo.
And then obviously this week we've been saying they're not going to be competitive until 2022, which sounds very much like the McLaren and Honda in the years, and Renault as well, years ago to get competitive. Why does it take so, well, I know why it takes so long to get competitive back in F1, but are the regulations now way too complicated? We talked about that many times, different reasons. Too complicated that, it can take a winter of slipping up to then create 2 years, 3 years of frustration and broken promises.
This is a special situation, don't forget, because we've got the frozen regulations because of Corona. I mean, in theory, with Ferrari's budget, they should be able to make it up in time for next year, but they're stuck with what they've got, in effect.
And a budget cap coming in as well, so they can't just throw all the cash at it to get better.
Yeah, I think it is. It's a perfect storm, really. It's the wrong time, which is why Ferrari are pushing to make the point that they accepted these frozen regulations for the greater good of Formula One, and it's what was needed doing, because there's obviously other areas that they probably want a little bit of help, and they're saying, well, we're limiting ourselves and kind of locking in this lack of performance. But then don't forget we've done this, whether that's a Concord Agreement thing or whether that's an engine performance thing, whatever it is. But yeah, they have actually put themselves, agreed to be in a very difficult spot for the next 18 months. And as you say, if it was normal, they could just buy their way out of it, really.
Well, and a third of the grid affected by Ferrari's troubles. It's
true. And it's clearly affected them most in qualifying, but you've got to get Charles Leclerc next year. He's staying on for a little while, probably feeling a bit frustrated now. Carlos Sainz coming in. Are these two drivers you think are able to put their heads together and help forge Ferrari forward? Because it's a very young driver lineup in the Ferrari context.
I find it a bit strange, actually, because I think Carlos is more likely to come in and feel he could make it his team as much as Charles believes already now that it's his team. Whereas I thought if they'd have taken Daniel Ricciardo, it would have been his last big opportunity to be in a front runner, really. It would have been someone who definitely can get on well with his teammates and just probably has been waiting for that break and would be a little bit more grateful of it, if this makes sense. In the sense, I think he'd understand if there was a desire or a need to kind of work for the team, that he would do it a little bit more willingly than maybe Carlos, who thinks this could be my future for the next 5 years if I prove myself to be the guy they should get behind. There's not a criticism of anyone who would take that approach, but I feel like there's more potential for issues with Sainz and Leclerc together than there were Ricciardo and Leclerc. But I mean, in a sense, it's the opposite to the Mercedes thing. Mercedes were winning all the time, so don't change anything. Ferrari aren't winning, so why not take that risk?
Yeah, give everything a go. Throw all the pasta at the wall and see what sticks.
What are the Italian references we're getting in this squeezing in today? Obviously, the technical restructuring is coming. Is that more to show that it's something, they're doing something to actually make a big difference? And also, I mean, there are pains to say it's not because of what happened last year with fuel flow regulated in the engine last year, but the timing seems suspicious, and it is an area they're clearly lacking at the moment.
Well,
so
they're also kicking things up in the way that only that Ferrari knows best. I mean, I'm sure you guys remember a few years ago, the Horse Whisperer blog. Well, he's back.
It's returned, yeah.
And he is talking about copies of the Mona Lisa and whether one goes to see the original in the Louvre or the copy in the Prado, and how they are not the same. I think that what we're going to be seeing from Ferrari is the kicking up of quite a lot of copying storms until they get exactly what they want. But they're kicking up. They're behaving themselves officially. I mean, they're restructuring. They're doing the kind of things that keep shareholders happy, that keep bosses happy. But yeah, I think we're looking at the beginning of Ferrari getting back into a little bit of the old Machiavellian politics that was so familiar in the late 90s, early noughties.
It's true. I mean, heads rolling at Ferrari is there's a whole cupboard full of whole room full of Ferrari heads at the moment. I mean, Benotto's been there a long time. He's been quite a charismatic figure when he wasn't in charge, but he's now found himself in charge. And I really thought he was going to be, a great step forward for Ferrari. Very knowledgeable, knows exactly what he's doing at, getting the best possible car. But that's the area where it's completely fallen adrift.
Yeah, it's strange, but they've, as Kate says, they keep pulling out even more kind of old school threats that we get from Ferrari. There was the quit threat that wasn't a quit threat. Now it's that they're going to go to IndyCar in some form. So suddenly F1 loses its exclusivity kind of links to Ferrari. Binotto's clearly got the. I was with you because he's like an engineer. You thought, actually, this could be the right sort of pragmatic guy to have in charge. But he's been there long enough to have learned the ropes, I think, from a political point of view as well. And he's playing that game as well. So, there's not a lot has changed in that sense within Ferrari. And it's a shame to see because a strong Ferrari is good for Formula One. And right now, especially, we could really have done with Ferrari being a lot stronger because Red Bull is struggling. But as it stands, with Red Bull struggling as well and Ferrari nowhere, it means Mercedes have got a clear walk at it.
Well, but we've got McLaren back at the front for the first time in what feels like 3 lifetimes. So, there's some progress. The midfield is getting better and better year on year. I mean, the battle for sort of 4, 5, 6, it's getting exciting. And hopefully the cost cuts, it'll be 3, 4, 5 that gets exciting. And then 2, 3, 4, I mean, but we if you think back to some of the really dreary years that we've had, actually seeing teams like McLaren on the up is good. Seeing Force India Racing Point quick is good. You've got big disappointments with and Renault just don't seem to have been anywhere. But there's some happy racing happening, even if it's all the same at the front. It's not the same everywhere else.
There's truly a lot of good, nice stories. Lando Norris comes at 4 in Austria, those 2 races, spectacular ends to the races, and the midfield battle is essentially fallen backwards at the moment. Williams is kind of making up that gap at the back, so it does seem a lot more, not unpredictable, but a lot more mixed up. Broad. It's not as easy to predict these races. But then again, we've got Mercedes out front. I guess we're kind of used to it now. Really, different colour, but same result.
Yeah, I mean, it looks great, but it's a shame, isn't it? We all know when you're writing reports or stories and all the talk is of the same headline of a Lewis Hamilton or Valtteri Bottas win and Mercedes dominate, people turn off a little bit, whereas you want to say to them, yeah, but the fight for 3rd or 4th was epic. And as you said, with the Norris results in the 2 Austria races, they were mega finishes. So obviously, hardcore fans, general fans, they see it. But when you're trying to attract some new fans, which probably this era right now with the whole issues with COVID and trying to increase income, is more important than ever, then it's a little bit of a shame to see such dominance, but can't knock them for it. They're just doing a great job.
Well, it's 2011 when Seb won absolutely everything. I got in the habit of writing my race report on a Saturday night after qualifying because there was very little that you had to change on Sunday. As long as you started with opened up a 2-second lead over the first lap, you were fine.
Yeah.
A couple of pit stops wrong, but generally speaking, you could write your race report on Saturday night and fix it on Sunday. We're not quite there now.
Everyone's definitely a lot more colourful this year with the We Racers One initiative and the various different initiatives they're doing now. Chris, obviously you've been to the events, you've kind of seen, be it through binoculars through the media centre window, the kneeling. I don't get too much into debate about the kneeling things. You can if you want, but how do you see what Formula One are doing at the moment? I think it's a really nice positive trend for the sport.
It should be. It was meant to be. It was the right noises to make, the right initiative to go for, but then they've just let it go too quiet over the last couple of races. And when few people have said, "Oh, what else are you doing now? Or what else is happening?" And there's been no response. It's been, there's Formula One hasn't come out and said, "Oh, well, we're not doing it for this reason," or "Yeah, we're going to do X, Y, or Z." It's just been silence. That's actually been a problem, I think, and I liken it to other sports that we're seeing. And the Premier League, right up to its final weekend last weekend, every game started with every player taking a knee. And they emphasised it towards the end to prove, yeah, this has been going on. This hasn't gone quiet. It's become a habit almost. And yeah, F1 was more like, let's do it the first time and then it's fine. And it takes time to instigate change. It does take time to turn these initiatives into actual sort of hard facts that you can point to and say, look what we've improved. But you can't just fade away and go quiet, because then there's every chance that it never gets brought up again, and certainly doesn't have the spotlight shone on it anymore. And that needs to continue. It's
become an issue actually internally, and they are aware of how badly it's been handled in the last couple of races, and there have been some resulting personnel changes. You're going to see a much better version from Silverstone going forward.
Yes, this is true. So obviously, the taking the knee stance, it's fine if some want to do it, some don't. That's their prerogative. But to have it, some standing around and some not there, and some taking the knee, that's almost more insulting than not at all, I guess.
Yeah, and you're either in or you're out. It's like being a little bit pregnant,
Now, I reckon that is all we've got time for today. So I must say a huge thank you to Kate and to Chris. Have a fantastic British Grand Prix, and back soon.
Thank you very much.
Hey guys, thanks for listening.